Wrath of Angels. Chapter 4. Scene 4. The Prophecy. On the shrine world Veyla, central plaza of the fallen reliquary. 4 hours after the collapse of the spire. Month 6, year 260, the 41st millennium. The shadow did not grow, it deepened. The rift above the spire sagged inward like a wound becoming sure of itself, and the plaza dimmed by increments until color felt like a boast. The shape inside it could not be measured. Every time a mind went to put a yard on it, the line bent and sulked. But wings were there, and horns like script curled from iron, and a smile you felt in your knuckles rather than saw. It did not step through, it owned the threshold. When it spoke, the city learned to flinch. The fallen will rise as chaos. The first legend will be undone. The words were not simply heard. Stone took them personally. Cracks lengthened along the plaza and turned corners as if following grammar. Mortar spat grit like letters losing arguments. Blood, Daemon Ichor, human, Astartes, found itself flowing along invisible rulings and settled into words that would remain even after the rain, if Veyla remembered what rain was. A shrine woman with hair grey as a censer chain mouthed the sentence until her lips split, and kept mouthing after that, because muscle remembers lessons that hurt. A cultist on his knees repeated the line incorrectly, and looked up at the shadow like a schoolboy daring the cane. A bolt through his eye awarded him silence. The prince's shadow did not seem disappointed. It had other students. A child thrall no older than 10 sang the words in a nursery cadence, as if the prophecy were a counting game. The sound made Ephraim's stomach twist. His shot ended the tune, mercy delivered in lead. An old man, bent and ash-stained, polished a shattered relic casing with the edge of his sleeve, even as wolves stalked past. When stone fell on him a moment later, he did not cry out. His hand still rubbed the metal as his skull split. Even in death, mortals tried to worship. A mother dragged her thrall child by the wrist through the plaza, lips torn with prayer. Bone flies descended in a ragged weather. She lifted her son high as if angels would pluck him from her arms. The swarm intercepted. When the cloud lifted, her arms still reached up, but they were empty, stripped to the bone. A Ravenwing biker, Orath, saw the gesture as he rode past and laughed too hard, the sound cracking, unable to decide if he mocked the demons or himself. The rift ate the light and fed it back in pieces. The horde arranged itself like an obedient paragraph. Blood letters in files, blades dragging and chiseling words that would not cure. Ash wolves circling to the edges where fear lives. Bone flies pouring down in a black weather, cloaking banner and helm until edges could not be seen. Last lanes, Kalen voxed. No drama, just the inventory of a butcher who knows what he has left and what he'll need. Celian, keep the stairs honest. Working, Celian answered. His auspex muttered, they want to be diagonal, we will not allow it. Orath laughed and rode where it said no. Veyna found anyone who looked like a leader and showed them the benefits of headlessness. Ravenwing drew lines through collapse. Bikes growled in curves that embarrassed geometry into behaving. Where the plaza bulged, they skimmed the hump and flattened it with intent. Where a transept tried to become a mouth, a twin-linked wash introduced the mouth to other priorities. When a dead dais remembered it used to be a stage and rose a finger width off the ground, Orath jumped it simply to teach it humility. At the center, emerald and bone and smoke, the Emerald Vow held. Anchor the world, Varrican said. Voice the bar you pull yourself up by. Malvin's banner came down and up again with a snap like a lesson. Ephraim's throat bled, but the words standing on it did not need comfort, only an address. Jorath kept his muzzle level by disobeying every part of himself that wanted to lift it too high. Garen made of discipline a visible thing, an iron hoop you could set a squad inside. The wolves came to argue. The line denied their premise. Armor drank heat and gave none back. Bolts made red holes in red flesh, and the holes convinced the surrounding red to stop being brave. Ephra's voice cracked and settled in a register not meant for men. Men listened anyway. Torvain swept a cloister of bone flies hard enough that the air learned manners. "Corvian," Varrican snapped. "The nave mouth. Lock it." Stormwing Corvian moved like a fact someone had the gall to forget. They hit the mouth as it widened. The sergeant's left arm hung, but his right did the work of two. "Litany of fire," he said. A table manner at the end of the world. First vow. The first burst turned wolves to dirty weather. The second split blood letters into arithmetic. The third met warp fire and ideology. Brother Tavian took flies into his lungs and managed half the vow of stone before wings wrote the rest. Ephras set his palm to the brow, gave him fire, and spoke truth faster than pain. Brother Chorus burned from the inside like a lamp. Brother Halion fired until his hand was empty, and his other hand was not a hand anymore. Another brother staggered as script burned across his breastplate. Letters gouged into his skin beneath, glowing from inside until he screamed not his own words, but the prince's. Garen's bolt cut the lesson short. "Hold," the sergeant repeated, and rammed a mag home with his teeth. His visor was cracked, but his eyes behind it remained steady. Two more brothers were dragged apart by bloodletters, who worked in pair-bonded precision, each daemon pulling an arm and laughing as the torso opened like a book. Their blood fell in neat punctuation marks that spattered the stone with exclamation points. Corvian did not falter. They filled the gap with their own bodies, firing point-blank into snarling faces. Sternguard Thelonious on the right-hand ruin moved like clerks who had been keeping this ledger since stone was soft. "Kraken," Marvek breathed, and a bloodletter's helm learned that penetration is a verb. The round drilled through skull and buried scripture into the wall behind. "Dragonfire," Yaren said, washing a stare with honesty. "Hellfire," Boar offered, and the flies turned to shining punctuation. "Vengeance," Thelonious concluded, and a Spireface lost an argument about being sacred. Each reload was a genuflection, a small industry of hands. Each death a receipt torn off and pressed into an indifferent palm. One veteran ran his thumb reverently along a cartridge before loading it, whispering the round's name like a saint. He died seconds later, but his shot split a bloodletter from pelvis to crown. The round clattered into ruin beside his body like a signature at the bottom of a will. Another, already half his torso missing, leaned against rubble, chambered a final vengeance shell, and fired into the prince's shadow. The blast passed through, but the gesture earned a grunt from the dark, as if acknowledgement had been given. The shadow frowned in the way long words frown. The fallen will rise as chaos. The line went colder. Malvin's banner guttered at the edges and then steadied, the green believing in itself out of spite. The plaza's seam reopened not quite, like a scar remembered for its conversation. Ash in the square twisted into letters before dispersing, wind unwilling to carry prophecy any further. "Circle," Dominiel voxed, and the Oathbound made a coin of themselves and spent it. Lutharian banged his shield into the ground until the ground accepted the weight. Abriath slid numbers over the battle and found a sum men could afford. Ramiel set his storm mace on his shoulder like an auctioneer about to start the work of ending doubt. Zephanis grinned like someone already halfway through a wound he intended to finish. Mortalis purred chain music. Dominiel's gauntlet answered with a squeeze that said again. They pushed. The tide argued that pushing was futile. The Oathbound answered that futility had not been consulted. A bloodletter caught Mortalis across the cheek of its blade, and the chain sang annoyance. Dominiel's second swing convinced the blade to consider shame. Ramiel put his thunder into a rhythm, and the plaza borrowed it. Boom, boom, boom. Men breathed there. Lutherian's shield remembered each script carved along its rim and made the words earn their keep. Abriath stood in a lane of nothing at all and filled it with direction. Zephanis planted his sword in a wolf's mouth and let the jaw close, and laughed at the jaw for presumption, and tore his arm free with a piece of himself left behind as a tip. The prince's shadow gestured. Bloodletters changed march into rush. Wolves ran where courage did not. Flies condensed over Malvin's cloth until the green was a smudge. Kaelin, Celian said, as if remarking on the weather. The banner is going to learn to drown. Do not allow it. Kaelin did not answer with words. His engines went from snarl to song, and the song cut a corridor through insects. Orath rode into blackness and came out chewing dead flies through grated laughter. Veynar put a bolt through the biggest fly, and the smallest one got the message. The prince spoke again, and this time the sentence went inside armor seals and sat in lungs. The first legend will be undone. It wrote across Zephanis' helm in fine fire. Laugh and be unmade. Zephanis laughed louder and the text blistered. It wrote along Lutherian's shield rim. Oaths as anchors. Drown, the rim burned, then the fire sank into the words like a student retaking a seat. It wrote across Ramiel's pauldron. Fall. The knight took the letter F and turned it on its side and used it for a step. Marble nearby began to hum with the words themselves, letters swelling in relief as if the plaza's very bones tried to preach doom. Armor vibrated audibly when the prophecy echoed, like the metal wanted to sing along. Mortals screamed as ash shapes formed into sentences, carried on the wind before scattering into dust. Malchadek felt the words try to nest in his vox and let them touch his teeth so they'd know their place. Silence protects the truth, he said, and the plaza had somewhere to put its feet. His second sentence carried an edge that wanted blood and got it. Silence denies the lie. His third was a verdict. Silence judges the unworthy. Mortals rose to hear him, some with hands still around icons, some with none left. They died standing because the litany had reminded their spines of their job descriptions. Varadiel tasted copper and old rain and kept the wards tight. Anchor, he murmured, which is what you say to the sea when you do not intend to drown. Futures came at him like well-meaning friends with bad advice. He turned each by the shoulders and showed it a door. A hairline crack opened along his gorget. He bared his teeth. The crack changed its mind. The mirror angel tried to become again out of what was left of its arguments. Abriath's blade turned the attempt into a footnote. Mortalis underlined the footnote. The note got the hint. Jorath, Garen said once. And the boy's hands stopped shaking because his name had been said properly. He fired like a man being introduced to his own bones. Wolves learned he had learned. Garen shot a cultist who was preaching with his intestines and made the preaching stop out of respect for listeners. Stormwing Corvian dwindled to a verb. The sergeant lost count, found it, lost it. He reloaded with his teeth again. There would be consequences later. Later would be grateful to exist. One brother had his helm filled with script fire until his skull popped like a vessel. Another was dragged screaming into the air by bone flies, fire venting from his seams until he came apart in mid-air like a candle flung too hard. Ephras, voiceless, made his mouth into the shape of mercy, and the shape worked whether or not the sound did. Garen dragged another back from the rift's lip, boots scraping sparks, and shot the shadow hand that tried to keep him. Thelonious' count fell to 6 and then 5, and then it decided to stay 5 to spite arithmetic. Marvek looked lighter by meat, but heavier by intent. Yaron pointed his last dragonfire shell at a cluster of flies that were trying to learn about banners and taught them folly. Boar did not answer when spoken to, and no one asked him again. Thelonious' bolter clicked empty, and he slammed in another magazine, as though writing a line too stubborn to leave blank. The prince's shadow thickened, as if breath were being taken on the other side. The plaza dimmed another degree. The seam shuddered open a finger-width more, like a grudging door. "Abriath?" Dominiel asked, because good questions make good rooms. "Now," Abriath said, which was not a time but a geometry. The Oathbound went all at once. Lutherian set his shield so low it made a floor. Ramiel struck to the left, then to the right, then again to the left, and the pattern undid a braid in the enemy's rhythm. Zephynis slid under teeth and came up under a promise, and left the promise embarrassed. Dominiel put Mortalis where the world's hinge would be, if the world were a door and then pushed. The chain wrote a circle that letters could not enter without burning. Things without skin tried and learned about screaming. The rift quivered. In it, the prince lifted a hand as if to snuff a candle, and found that though his reach was sufficient, will and permission were distinct luxuries. "The first legend will be undone," he said again, and the sentence sounded like someone repeating a line they no longer believed. "Silence," Malchadek replied, and for a sick heartbeat everyone thought he was being polite. The next beat taught them that politeness, properly understood, is an axe. Varadiel took the last of himself and wrapped it around the seam, and for a blink the tear wore chains. The plaza held its breath, and the breath hurt. Demons quailed in a way not native to them. Wolves thought about the idea of the heel and did not like it. Bloodletters ran out of sword to drag. Flies fell like a mistaken season. Ravenwing idled around the edges, with their engines ready to become sermon if sermon failed. The Emerald Vow advanced exactly 2 paces and did not yield either of them back. Stormwing Corvian traded 3 men for 1 corner of the mouth and then refused to allow either figure to be questioned. Sternguard Thelonious reloaded a magazine that did not exist and then discovered it did, because sometimes reality will humor a tidy man. The prince laughed. Torn contract, torn veil. The shadow thinned in a way that implied choice rather than deficit. The seam began to close as if embarrassed, like a shirt being buttoned in a hurry. The horde unraveled with the sullen reluctance of children being called in from a game. Wolves broke into ember and habit. Bloodletters lost blade before body and had the courtesy to bow out. Flies fell and tried to become something pensively symbolic and instead became dirt. "Do not chase," Varicon warned, the tone that prevents funerals. "Hold lanes," Kalen added, already doing it. Celian drew a final line in the air with his auspex, and the square obeyed because the square had run out of better ideas. Orath wheeled slow, grinning, counting missing pieces by how easy his gloves moved. The seam closed to a vein, and then to a healed lie. The last echo of the prince's voice went round the plaza, like a breeze in a room nobody had admitted was warm. Silence did not arrive. It was. It had been here first, and now it recollected itself. The flagstones steamed in letters that would be read by no one living. The banner smoked at its hems and held. Men stood and discovered that their legs were heavier than their spears had been. Someone wept without sound against the green cloth and left a clean mark where tears removed ash. The watchers came as if released from brackets in the scene's margins. They moved to mortals first, which is either kindness or accounting. Vellum lay across eyes, across mouths. Silence. Enough. Rest. The letters glowed, went in, came to a decision, and the bodies relaxed into nouns. Some parchment left faint scars, letter shapes burned into cheeks and foreheads, reminders that silence is not a gift, but a sentence. One mortal tried to resist the sealing, begging to remember what he had seen. But the watchers pressed the vellum anyway. His voice stifled to nothing, his eyes going calm as words branded his skin. Mortals who scavenged shell casings as relics found them plucked from their hands by watchers with gentle insistence. No trophies of this day would travel. Dominiel set Mortalis' head down and leaned until the chain went slack and caught a breath in its links. Lutherian shifted his shield's weight, and the scrape it made sounded like the end of a chapter. Ramiel's helm was split and one eye burned steady but ordinary, which is a miracle. Zephanis peeled a fly's wing from his cheek and became bored with it halfway through, and laughed at himself for the boredom and the self. Abriath brought his sword to his helm in a gesture that acknowledged mathematics and asked forgiveness of nothing. Varadiel shook once all down his armor, as if emptying pockets, and found nothing he could afford to lose. Malchadek set the Crozius haft on stone and rested both hands on it like a tired bridge on two islands. Varadiel's eyes still flickered with visions. For an instant he saw Caliban as it was, forest cracked like glass, shadows of the lion walking paths long gone. He dismissed it with effort, grounding himself in the broken plaza. "Report," Dominiel said, "which is what you say to hold a room together." "Emerald Vow, blooded," Varrican answered. His voice listed the dead as if they were debts paid and satisfaction taken. "Banner stands." "Ravenwing, geometry present. No encirclement," Kalen said. "Stormwing Corvian," Garin began, and did not complete it. Everyone understood the shape of the number. "Sternguard Thelonious, 5, Thelonious said. And anybody who had breath left to spare let it out. "Proceeding." Abriath looked up where the seam had been. There was only sky, but there is always only sky after it has finished with you. Dominiel voxed onto the net that records weight where weight belongs. On Veyla, a prince did not cross. He spoke doom and sent beasts in his place. The hexagrammaton answered, doom denied, for now. Somewhere high above, the wrath answered with a groan that sounded like a library remembering a book misshelved for years, and finally set in its proper place. Bulkheads ticked as heat went foolish and then sane. A hatchway far aft knocked once. No one went to see who was there. They formed up to leave, because lingering invites ghosts and obligations. They did not turn their backs until the plaza had accepted the duty of watching itself. As they moved, silence walked with them like a heavy friend. The words the prince had nailed into the day cooled behind them, to dark iron. In time, moss would find the letters and make them pretty. For now, they were sharp. At the mouth of the square, Jorath looked once over his shoulder and thought he saw, where the seam had been, a hand raised as if in farewell. He blinked, and the sky had gone back to being unhelpful. "Forward," Varrican said. "Forward," Kalen repeated, tone like a door half open. "Forward," Dominiel finished, and the word meant survival. This has been Wrath of Angels, Chapter 4, Scene 4, The Prophecy. Chapter 5, Scene 1 follows. This has been Wrath of Angels, Chapter 4, Scene 4, The Prophecy. Chapter 5, Scene 1 follows.